It feels like every single day another influencer is launching a new brand. Whether it's clothing or beauty or coffee, influencers are truly everywhere and they are turning their social presence into businesses. But as we've seen time and time again, that facade of perfection oftentimes will eventually crumble, especially when it comes to owning their own brands. Now, what sparked this video is, of course, the recent news surrounding djerf Avenue and their mistreatment of workers. And yes, we are going to touch a little bit on that in this video, but I want to look beyond djerf Avenue because I do think that this pattern of very high praise success with a sudden downfall is a lot more common than we think. So first, let's start with what is actually driving influencers to start their own brand. What is driving them to come up with the idea, launch it, and sometimes have success with it? And that is, of course, parasocial relationships. Now, what exactly are parasocial relationships? According to findapsychologist.org, parasocial relationships are one-sided relationships where one person extends emotional energy, interest, and time, and the other party, the persona, is completely unaware of the other's existence. And to be honest with you, I think that it's fair to say most of us have had these types of relationships. I know I have these types of relationships. There are definitely people I follow and admire and engage with online that have no idea who I am. But the issue with parasocial relationships comes down to the attachment and the unwavering trust that they create. When someone becomes a part of your daily digital life, which again is a very common thing for a majority of us, and you admire them, of course, and you potentially engage with them, it is very natural to build some type of trust with that person. Or I should say trust for that person, because of course, again, parasocial relationships are one-sided. But here is the reality about parasocial relationships when it comes to influencers and anybody for that matter. Celebrities, influencers, anybody you're engaging with online that you do not know personally, and that is they are not your friend. And I think this is something that many of us struggle to grasp, especially when we're seeing such personal details about some of these influencers' lives and they're letting us in on personal struggles and, you know, what's going on in their family, in their homes, in their wardrobes, like all these things that are very in tune with them and personal to them. It's kind of easy to build this trust in this relationship with them. And at the core of it, influencers are successful because what they're selling is a lifestyle. They present a very curated lifestyle that we are really drawn to, and it makes us feel like if we wear what they wear, if we buy what they buy, if we decorate our homes like they do, that we will somehow achieve the same aesthetic or happiness that they portray. So how does this directly tie to influencer brands and creating them and, you know, sometimes the success of them? I think that a lot of influencers see the opportunity to sell their lifestyle in the form of a product. And I also think that many people who support influencer brands are oftentimes not purchasing for the product, but because it feels like a step closer to the lifestyle that the influencer is selling. It's aspirational. And I think also for some people, by owning a product that is not only endorsed by an influencer, but actually created by them, it creates a deeper connection to that person. So parasocial relationships, without a doubt, are the reason for any type of influencer success. And let me just make it clear that I'm not saying every single parasocial relationship is bad by any means, but I think that where the danger actually lies is when we are taking these very curated lives as face value, and when we try to copy and paste these false narratives into our lives, and then we are hit with, you know, unrealistic expectations. And another thing I want to make clear is I'm not saying that every single influencer brand out there is inherently bad. There are examples of influencers or celebrities, you could even say, that have made promises to their audience and have actually delivered on them. However, as a mindful consumption channel, it is very safe to say that we have enough stuff in the world And we do not need more influencers creating more brands to create more stuff, to create more environmental destruction, among many other things. So of course there are just way too many brands in this world and way too many influencers coming up with brands that we just don't need. And I also think that the other issue is with the broader culture that is unwaveringly supporting these brands without asking critical questions like, why am I actually buying this item? What's the purpose it's going to use for me? Who am I actually supporting? And just why? So let's take a closer look at 3 influencer brands who have faced some type of failure or controversy over recent years for one reason or another. So first, of course, I feel like we just have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Djerf Avenue. Djerf Avenue was founded in 2019 by the Swedish influencer Matilda Djerf. It is known for these very high quality basics. It's known for kind of appealing to this Scandi style aesthetic that people really love. And it also made a promise for inclusivity by selling a size range from XXS to 4XL. And I think it's safe to say that people really grew to love this brand. And obviously a huge reason for the success of the brand was Matilda's following. She has millions and millions and millions of followers across Instagram and TikTok. However, she's losing them quite quickly after this controversy, so let's talk about it. Matilda has been accused of 11 current and former anonymous employees of creating a toxic workplace. Allegations include bullying, they include fat-phobic comments, and probably the most bizarre is that she reserved a special exclusive toilet just for her and a select number of employees. And apparently someone outside of those employees used the bathroom and then she was made to clean it afterwards. When people are in positions of power, especially when it comes to their own brand or their own company, they can and will act in ways that are completely delusional. And I think the real issue at hand here is that power is addictive. And when people like Matilda start to gain a certain amount of influence, which she had through both her own personal brand as well as her clothing brand, they start to think that the rules don't apply to them and that they are completely immune to criticism. And I think that this is why this entire situation has shocked quite a few people. I don't think that everybody's entirely shocked, but I have seen quite a few people online say that Matilda has built her brand on being this kind and sweet and supportive person, very much a girl's girl. And she claimed that her brand reflected those values as well. But here's the thing. If your brand does not reflect the values that you are preaching and showing to your audience, the cracks are inevitably going to show at some point. And they very much did with Matilda Djerf. So seeing the employees actually come forward and call Matilda out, I'm so proud. More people need to do this because then it will hopefully allow other people to feel brave enough to stand up in their own toxic workplaces as well. And I think that it takes guts to stand up to somebody who has such a loyal audience and somebody who has created this very false persona of themselves. So as for Djerf Avenue, I don't really see things going very well for the brand moving forward. I wouldn't be surprised over the next few months if they are scrambling to restructure their HR, if they're bringing people into the company to talk about inclusion. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they're very much trying to put a band-aid over a bullet hole kind of situation. And then I wouldn't be surprised if the company actually shuts down over the next year or two. You know, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it'll come back. I don't really think it will. We'll find out, but actions have consequences. Moral of the story. Next, I want to talk about the clothing brand maebe. Now, maebe was actually just launched fairly recently by the influencer Molly Mae Higgs. She is, from what I have read and what I've seen, UK's biggest influencer. I'm not really sure, but she's extremely popular. So she launched her brand a couple of months ago in September 2024, and within 24 minutes of the website being live, everything sold out. So again, this is very much speaking to the love that people have for Molly Mae and the actual influence that she has, of course. Now, the main controversy around the maebe clothing line is that they are accused of selling fast fashion quality items at a too high price point. And then on top of the quality concerns, people are just pretty much saying that the brand has no unique selling proposition. There's nothing special about these items that justifies the price point and justifies people spending the price point. Now, on top of that, when the website launched, it was missing the fabric composition of the products. So that's a regulation, like you have to have that on your website no matter what. So it kind of also just feels a little bit lazy in terms of not doing your due diligence on what type of regulations you actually need to have on your website in order to be compliant with the law. And I do think that that's interesting because it makes me wonder if they were just trying to, avoid the topic of conversation that many of the items are very synthetic heavy. I also saw quite a few people talking about the 140-pound blazer that started pilling only after a wear or two, which is just outrageous to price something that high and then to not have the quality control behind it. It's unacceptable. Now, here's something that I found a little bit ironic on the maebe website. It says, maebe is a non-seasonal brand crafted to elevate your everyday wardrobe. That's one sentence that they have on there. And then they also say it's for the person who seeks a touch of sophistication in their day-to-day style, but without the unattainable price point. Now, for me, this just highlights the utter delusion behind influencer brands. Molly Mae seems to think that she is filling some type of gap in the market, which is honestly the most important thing you need in order to be a successful brand. You have to find what's missing, you have to find a pain point, you have to find a problem within the market, and then you have to fix it. She's not fixing anything. This gap has been filled many, many times over and over again. So this is, again, another reason why I think it's safe to assume that a majority, if not all of the people who bought Molly Mae's clothing brand when she launched it, bought it for the fact that it's being created and sold by Molly Mae rather than the actual product itself. Now, to be fair, Molly Mae can definitely go back and fix these issues. They can, go back to the drawing board and learn how to be better from all of this feedback from consumers. However, do we really need another brand like this? No, we do not. There is already an abundance of clothing in the world that looks exactly like the items that Molly Mae is selling, and you can find them secondhand for a fraction of the price. We do not need any more clothes. So at the end of the day, Molly Mae's brand is the perfect example of just because you can doesn't mean you should. The last brand I want to mention is Something Navy. Now, Something Navy was a personal brand for a very long time, but the actual clothing brand was founded in 2018 by Ariel Charnes, who was very much the first wave of influencers online. I would very much call her an original, if not the original, fashion influencer. The brand initially launched in collaboration with Nordstrom. It was a hit. It sold out very quickly online. And then in summer 2020, it launched as an independent brand being sold online and in stores. Now, Ariel herself has been a fairly controversial figure throughout her influencer career. One of the biggest scandals that was tied to her name was in the beginning of COVID, when COVID tests were really hard to come by, and she somehow secured a very rare COVID test to be able to go out to the Hamptons. And this obviously caused a lot of stir amongst people. It was extremely tone deaf. Now, this controversy did happen before she launched her independent brand in 2020. So, there weren't any direct consequences to her clothing brand at the time. But beyond that, I do think that the real downfall of Something Navy is that they couldn't recreate the initial success that they had with the Nordstrom launch. The brand was losing more and more money over the years, and a lot of people were blaming the quality. This was another brand that was promising high quality items at higher than average price points. And people were, fair to express their frustrations with the brand. One customer explained that the clothing felt very much like Mango or Zara quality, but it was of course priced much higher. And another big issue with Ariel, and probably in my opinion the biggest issue when it comes to the downfall of Something Navy, is the fact that she was not promoting her brand on her social media platforms nearly as much as she should have. She would oftentimes promote other brands. And I'm not saying that if you own a clothing brand, you're required to exclusively wear your clothing brand. But if you're promoting other brands over your own, what does that say? So when I think of this, I think two things. Number one, she just doesn't care that much about the brand, which could very well be the case, especially if you have a ton of success with a brand and then it kind of just slowly fades and doesn't do as well as you were hoping. I could understand where there's a detachment from it, but that doesn't absolve you of your duties as the brand founder to actually promote it. And the other thing is that I kind of feel like Ariel was making more money promoting other brands than she was through the sales of the items that she was promoting. So she kind of just chose other brands over her own. Now, of course, this is just speculation, it's just my opinion, but if you are an influencer and a founder of your own clothing brand, don't you think you should talk about it as much as possible? Like, this is the whole thing that we've been talking about. Parasocial relationships are the reason for the success of influencer brands. You have to talk about it. So after a few years of being in business, Something Navy went off into the night. It never made any type of money, and nothing has ever been revived of it. And from what I can tell, Ariel's still active on social media, and she also now runs a Substack. And honestly, I think that's for the best. So now I want to talk about where I think influencer brands are headed. Do I think influencer brands are going away anytime soon? No, I do not. As long as influencers have A, an inflated sense of confidence, and B, no one around them saying, you don't really need to do that, then I think influencer brands are inevitable. But the truth of the matter is that we don't need more stuff. But when influencers see the opportunity to make more money by launching their own clothing brand, rather than relying on the directives of brand partnerships from other brands, it's obviously appealing. That being said, I do think there's often a superiority complex at play. They believe that they can do better because they have this inflated confidence, because they have this inflated sense of power. But in reality, I don't think many of them can. So what I personally would love to see from influencers, both, a new wave of influencers and existing influencers, is a shift to promoting mindful consumption as opposed to encouraging people to buy more all the time. Now, just imagine if there were influencers out there who would make that shift and they could create their own brand, but instead of launching these things that we truly don't need, they could launch things like a consignment shop within their city. They could host monthly clothing swaps at a local park, or they could rent out a business, or whatever the case may be. Or they could start making their own clothes and just encouraging people to rewear them. Now, there are, of course, many influencers doing this. I think it's fantastic. I'm so happy that the influencer, creator ecosystem is not full of just people promoting overconsumption time and time again like it was, 5-10 years ago or so. But I think where I would really love to see change is within those influencers promoting overconsumption and starting their own brands and just giving the world more than what we actually need. However, I think that when money and power comes into play, it's very difficult to make those shifts because that vicious cycle is just so addicting. But if you guys know any influencers who have either made that shift from promoting fast fashion brands to mindful consumption, I'm not sure if there's any, but if you know of any, drop them in the comments below. I would love to check them out. Or if you just have any favorite influencers that promote secondhand shopping, mindful consumption, making your own clothes, anything like that, drop them in the comments. I would love to give them a follow, love to, you know, learn from them. And yeah, hopefully we will see change one day, but who knows? All right, you guys, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see me dive into any other subject surrounding the fashion industry, leave a comment down below and I will see what I can do. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.